Hello, everyone, and welcome to Library Journal Day of Dialogue. My name is Becky Spratford, and I'm the Library Journal Horror Review columnist, and I'll be moderating the opening keynote to kick off our entire day of awesome programming. But before we begin, I'd like to thank all of the sponsors for sharing their talent and helping to make today happen. Please make sure to visit the exhibit hall and say hello to the publishing reps and download the free resources. Also, personally, I would like to give a shout out to the Reaching Across Illinois Library System, where I am here today offering this keynote for you due to other things that have to happen in the library world. But thank you so much to the Reaching Across Illinois Library System Rails for hosting me today. I want you to also remember that all of today's sessions and the entire virtual environment are available on demand for 3 months. So come and go as you please. And if you miss anything, you can always watch it later. Now, to the reason you're here, I would like to welcome Stephen Graham Jones onto the screen. You can see Stephen Graham Jones's bio in the speakers tab for the day. And I want to just let you know that we're here today to have a conversation for the next 30 minutes or so to start your day off right. Welcome, Stephen. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Honored to be here.
This is going to be great. As you saw on the screen in the opening slides, we are here to talk about the Buffalo Hunter, among other things. There we go. That is your next novel out from Saga Press. I'm sure it's already on hold at a lot of libraries, but it is coming out on March 18th, 2025. I want to start by talking there. I don't want to tease people by waiting for them to have to talk about it. Just to give a little preview, it's a historical horror novel. It's also a vampire horror novel. It's a revenge story, and it's a lot more. I know you don't write anything thinking about what subgenre or category it's going to fall into, but as you know, library workers need to be able to have a shorthand to talk a title to a potential reader, and identifying these tropes helps us to get your books into the right hands. So can you talk about how the Buffalo Hunter came together, and if you wrote those tropes in intentionally or not?
What happened, I can go all the way back to I was a teenage slasher, really. I taught a graduate seminar called Found Footage Fiction. And then immediately when I was finished with that course, I wrote I was a teenage slasher because I learned all these tricks about textual artifacts and how to fake like a thing is real. And then another semester, this would have been a year ago, maybe, I taught a grad seminar on the vampire. And so we started out with, Dracula, Salem's Lot, Interview with the Vampire, on up through Lesser Dead and everything. And so then right when I was finished with that course, I think it was actually a few days before we finished the course, I started writing the Buffalo Hunter. And like everything I write, I really had, like you're right, I had no idea really where I was going, how it was going to happen, any of that. But what really surprised me was it's what happens in Buffalo Hunter, without spoiling anything, it's just setting it up, is in 2012, during some renovations in Montana, a journal, an old diary, is found in a wall, tucked away. It's been hidden. And that journal is extracted and conserved and digitized. And turns out that it's the day log, the day book of a Lutheran pastor from Miles City, Montana. And he wrote this in 1912 when in his congregation, a Blackfeet guy showed up and hung around after the sermon and started telling this Lutheran pastor his life story. It starts in 1833 and he finishes the story in 1884. And those are some pivotal years for the Blackfeet. There was a lot of treaties made and broken, smallpox hit us over and over. There was the Marias Massacre in 1870, which we call the Bear River. And there was starvation winter in 1884. There was just a lot of things happening over this Blackfeet guy, his life. And there's some justice that needs to be extracted as well in this novel. And Good Stab is either is or isn't a vampire. He claims to be a vampire, We'll see.
Always giving a little bit extra, right? Can I love that you talked about the found footage, and it does open immediately with the diary, and it's clearly the frame for the book. But can I ask you a little bit? We didn't preview talking about this, but I did notice some of the things you learned by doing the Earth Divers
Yeah,
series as well in this book. I know you didn't mention it, but can you talk a little bit about Earth Divers and how
yeah,
in that series really helped inform, because you didn't really do historical fiction before Earth Divers, which is
no,
alternative historical fiction,
yeah.
but still.
Yeah. Yeah. The closest I'd come before was Leadfeather back in '07 maybe. And
Yeah.
but it kind of goes back and forth between contemporary and back in the late 19th century. But you're right, Earthdivers was very important for me kind of coming up with the idea for Buffalo Hunter x Hunter. What happened was with Earthdivers, we knew we were going to do 6 issue arcs with little arcs between that, 3 and 4 issue arcs. And the first of those was Ice Age, and the second was going to be the Buffalo Hunter x Hunter. I pitched that to the editor at IDW, Maggie Howell, and she was all over it. She thought it was wonderful, wonderful. But then we ended up going a different way with Earth Divers, and so I still had this title, the Buffalo Hunter x Hunter, and it no longer had to be tied to these time travelers. And I was able to open the story up into horror instead of science fiction, and that helped a whole lot. And kind of the way that I honor that connection is I set Buffalo Hunter x Hunter in 2012, the same way that Earth Diver starts in 2112. So it's like it's fun using the same numbers, anyways.
It's like a little Easter egg. And, I
Yeah.
think that's important for those watching this who know you for your novels. The Earth Diver graphic novel series with IDW is fascinating. And now we know there's a secret connection. So thank you for sharing that with us. Um, I wanted to talk to you about your horror origin story because it's a great story. But also I want to tie it into the fact that earlier in October, there was a day called SGJ Day that was being celebrated all over the internet. If you missed it, I'm going to tell you what it was. It was to honor a bunch of your backlist, which now that you're so popular, all of these books that are out of print are being brought back into print. And it got me thinking, was this like a this is your life moment a little bit, seeing all these books come back? But just so the library workers out there know, you can go and order them. We can talk about some of them. But I want to take it back even further, right? To get to the point where you are a best-selling author, to when you started, not just those books that went out of print. Let's talk about that origin story.
Yeah, man, what is that? It's hard to even figure out where it starts, but I would say it probably starts with me getting kicked out of high school. I had a big problem with getting kicked out of high school. I don't know if it's a problem. I think I was just really good at getting kicked out of high school. So I did it over and over. And it turned out I didn't have any more high schools to go to. And so I had to kind of go around the corner and get my degree, take a test and get my degree. And when I got that degree, my mom took me out to dinner and she gave me a suitcase. She said, "You got to get out of this town. It's going to kill you." And I'm glad she did that because, she's right. And she also said, "You've always been reading books." I was always the only one of all of my friends or everybody in my school really who read the book. I always had a book tucked into my back pocket, whether it was a paperback or a comic book or a magazine or whatever. I'm just a compulsive reader. And she said, my mom told me, "You need to be around people who read books." And I'd only ever planned to be a farmer. That's all I was going to do with my life. That's why I didn't need high school. You don't need high school to drive a tractor. But my mom said, "I've saved up enough money for you to go to one semester of college so you can hang out with people who read books." And I figured I can put off driving tractor for 4 more months for a fall semester. So I went up to Lubbock, Texas, 2 hours north of me, where I grew up, and went to college. And I was a philosophy major. And my second week of class, I think it was, I was sitting in a classroom with 17 other people. We had been assigned to read a book by this Wednesday, I think it was. And for the first time in my whole life, I sat in a room with people who had also read the book because I was always the only one who read it, and I knew the answers, the teacher to the questions the teacher would ask, but in elementary and in junior high and high school. But at the same time, if I raise my hand and answer that question correctly, I'm going to get beat up after class, So my mom was right. I need to be around people who read books, and she totally was right. And so I fell in love with school then, after I had not fell in love with it for 18 years. And
Look, you're
I
still
said,
there, right? You're
I'm
still
still
there.
here.
You're
I was,
teaching.
I
You got the
was,
PhD and you're teaching.
yeah, for sure. I can't get away from it. I love it. And so then the second semester when I stayed, I got loans and jobs and all that stuff, and I'm making it through somehow. And I'm in the back of a monster classroom, and I had signed up when my advisor was sitting across from me, and he said, "All right, there's a monster class that still has some spots." Like before he even finished talking, I was jumping on that because I had to be in a monster class. And turns out that what they meant by monster class was it's like 350 people. It's not like vampires and werewolves. And so I was sitting in the back of a huge auditorium, spiral notebook and a pen, and I am taking notes on Chaucer or Dante or something like that. And police officers walk in and they lower their sunglasses because it's kind of dark, and they're looking around, and I'm going lower and lower in my seat because in my whole life, every time the police officers come in the room, it's always for me. And sure enough, it's for me. They pull me out, and I slouch out behind them, ready to take whatever I have to take. And turns out that I'm not in trouble. One of my uncles back home, 2 hours south, had been burned over 95% of his body really badly, and they had airlifted him to Lubbock, Texas, where I was going to school at Texas Tech, because we had the best burn unit in the region, and I was the only family member they could find. And so they delivered me to the hospital, and I sat there in the waiting room of the burn unit ICU, waiting for him to live or die for 3 days and 3 nights, just living off a vending machine. I read every magazine in that place, cover to cover. And once I ran out of magazines to read, I got bored. And I had that pen and that spiral had been taking notes with in monster class. And I just purely out of boredom, I wrote a story. And then when I came back to my composition two class on Monday, after having missed Wednesday and Friday because I was in the hospital, I had not written the personal essay I was supposed to have written. And we all lined up to turn our stories in to the instructor. She sat at her desk and we put them up on the right corner of her desk. That was the procedure. And so I lined up, and what I did was I tore that story out of my spiral notebook, crimped the top of it, and I put it there with everybody else's typed and printed and everything, stuff, essays. And mine was off topic, handwritten. The instructor should not have looked at it. She shouldn't have considered it, but she did. And she liked it enough that she passed it on to the creative writing faculty. And one of those creative writing faculty members typed up my story, and without my knowledge, entered it into a departmental contest for undergrads. And I won that contest and I got $50. And that was my first experience with turning lies into groceries, and that's an amazing transmutation. I had no idea that was possible. So I just kept on, after that, I just kept on writing and writing and getting little checks and little publications and winning little awards, and just got bigger and bigger and bigger. And here I am.
I think it's so fitting that the story fits in with your life in general with the police but it took a horrific event for you to really connect with horror. And then it just has gone on from there. I want to tell everybody, he still writes stories like this. One time we were guests of honor together at Stoker Con. That's where we first met in 2017 on the Queen Mary. And I forever tell this story because it is classic, Stephen, that we were doing a reading and somebody was late or didn't show up. And Stephen's like, "Oh, I have a story. I can go." And he literally pulls a piece of spiral notebook paper out of his pocket. This was years later. That he wrote on the airplane, which isn't far between Denver and Southern California. And of course, and then I will always remember this, another name you all know, Chuck Wendig, went, "Of course, his is the best story." So you're still doing it. You're still writing those stories in those minutes. I know in your acknowledgement, you often talk about writing some of these books on a plane. I think, this goes to our next question. I think I Was a Teenage Slasher is a great example. We can talk about you writing that, but I want to talk about the last year you had, because you had two stellar books come out. You had the final book in the J. Daniels series. I'm wearing my shirt. In the Indian Lake trilogy, which in Library Journal, I called that a gift. And then you had I Was a Teenage Slasher. And when I wrote my review, it got a star in Library Journal, but I did the review and book list. And in it, I said, Tolly, who is the hero of I Was a Teenage Slasher, I felt like he was the yin to J. Daniels yang. Now, what I want to know, and I know a little bit about it, but to tell everybody else, did you set out to write the stories in this way? And what did you explore in I Was a Teenage Slasher that you couldn't do with Jade's story? Which is interesting because it's like 1,000 pages, but you definitely explore different things. And is your exploration of the slasher genre done?
Maybe I can answer in reverse. No, it's not done. I'll continue to write slashers. I'll just be mixing more stuff in, like vampires, and I want to do a possession novel. And as you may have seen, next year I'll also have Killer on the Road coming out, and it's more of I would say it's monster adjacent story. It has slasher elements, but it's kind of a chase monster novel. And but yeah, no, I did not plan on Jade and Tully being like complementary or opposite sides of the coin. I mean, but after I published it, somebody told me, they said, "Oh, you were writing the Final Girl trilogy, so of course you've turned around and wrote a slasher book from the slasher's point of view." And I hadn't even thought of that. I don't think of things when I write. I just write and like follow the feelings and the fun and the blood. And those bloody footprints lead me into room after room after room, and it gets darker and darker and darker, and I just keep following, and I never know really what I'm doing or why I'm doing it. But yes, you're right. I was able to explore different things in I Was a Teenage Slasher. Specifically, what I felt like I was able to do that I wasn't able to do in the Indian Lakes trilogy was um, back in 2011, Cabin in the Woods came out, and I felt like that was like Scream had been number one, like a one-two punch, like it was Scream and Cabin, and they both did some things with a slasher that had not been done before, and I really, really respected what they did. And Cabin gave us a different kind of superstructure behind the whole slasher dynamic. And I thought, Josh Whedon and Drew Goddard did something that will not be replicated. But all the same, I kept thinking, there's another way to do it. I can do something different. And finally, with I Was a Teenage Slasher, I just kind of blindly stumbled into it. I wish I could say I strategized it and I had it all planned out on paper, but it just like, it's less that the idea or the premise or the situation comes to me, and it's more that the character starts speaking and I listen to that character. And that's what I Was a Teenage Slasher was. Tolly just started talking and I had to follow what he was doing. And it turns out, luckily, he wanted to go into like something that would be a cousin to Cabin in the Woods, anyways, into that kind of story. And yeah, I just followed him and followed him, and it was so much fun. But I so wish that I had the ability to like look ahead or plan or any of that, but I never do. I just I write, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
I mean, it's working, so that's good. And it's interesting. Before you said your mom said, "Whatever you do, you have to get out of this town."
Hmm.
Is that why we have Tolly, who's sort of you?
Yeah.
And I'm not going to give anything away, but he kind of does have to get out of town.
He does, yeah. You're that. Until this moment, I had never seen that similarity, or that parallel. And no, you're totally right, though. I think that, I mean, Tolly is 17 in 1989, exactly like I was. He lived and he's in Lamesa, and I spent a lot of time in Lamesa. I grew up in Stanton more, which is about 45 miles away, but feels like home turf. And yes, I had to leave, and he had to leave. I guess the difference is he had a body count. I didn't have a body count.
We're very happy for that. And do you have a peanut allergy?
I do not. No,
Okay,
no,
that is
no.
key to the story if you haven't read it. But
Mhm.
real quick before we go to the next question, what has it been like to see people embrace Jade Daniels? I mean, we have these shirts that we
Mhm.
wear them all over the world.
Mhm.
Um, I know that when you started My Heart is a Chainsaw, you didn't know till it was done, and you talked to
Mhm.
Joe Monti over at Saga about making it a trilogy. But
Yeah.
how has it been like to see everyone embrace her so much?
It's like fulfilling and surprising both at the same time. I never expected it. Like to me, my characters mean the world, of course. Ever since like Pigeon Bow and Energies and the Fast Red Road, LP Deal and The Bird Is Gone, Jim Doe and All the Beautiful Sinners, Hale and Nona and Demon Theory, and just on and on and on. They all matter so much to me. They're completely real to me. And But it's really nice when a character like Jade, she just like rises up out of the water fully formed with her bad attitude, her sneer, and somehow her cigarette is lit already, even though she was in the lake. And yeah, it's wonderful that people care about Jade so much and that they see things in her. And it was really hard to let Jade go. In a lot of the books lately that I've been signing, the Indian Lake books, I write that all I want to do is sit on Melanie's bench with Jade one more
Bench.
time. Yeah, and that would
Yeah.
just feel so good to me. But you don't get to hold on to all your characters. You have to let them go. That's kind of what they earn, I think.
And I bet it's gonna, this Halloween is gonna be the
Mhm.
anniversary of when the book ends, like
Yeah.
the year it ends. I wrote about on my blog about how I literally did not on purpose finished the book on the
Hmm.
day that the story ends.
Hmm.
And I know not everyone could because I read it early.
Hmm.
So everybody go read it and go find a bench to sit on. We have about 10 minutes left. So we have a surprise for everyone. That we're going to give them some brand new Stephen Graham Jones words, never before heard. Next fall, I am joining the Saga Press family with Joe Monty and Stephen and others to have a book called Why I Love Horror, and you should too. I have read all the essays that are going to be in the book, and I can tell everyone here that yours, Stephen, is one of the very best in the book.
Thank you.
I love how you wrote about why you love horror, but also you wrote it in a unique narrative cadence. I feel like it's your unique narrative cadence. It represents you in every way. And that book will be out next fall, or this coming fall, I guess, because we're almost through fall, February or September 2025. But today we're going to give everyone a preview of Stephen's essay and one of his reasons about why he loves horror.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm honored to read this here. Yeah. My essay is, I do a lot of lists. I mean, I compulsively keep lists. I've got about probably 3,000 lists on my phone, but I wrote this Why Horror as a series of bullet points, and this is one of those bullet points. Why horror? Because it makes us human. We spent some 6 million years pulling ourselves together on the savannah. Over those 6 million years, we were trading trees for a more ground-bound way of life, meaning we no longer needed the upper body strength that was good both for hanging from tree limbs and for self-defense. When we got omnivorous, that meant our teeth had to be multi-purpose, couldn't be sharp and scary anymore. When we needed sweat in order to run prey down in the heat of the day, when that prey was at a disadvantage, we lost our fur, which had previously been pretty good camouflage. On and on like this, we lost attribute after attribute, which could help us survive in tooth and claw land. And the hungry things patrolling these grasslands, they definitely took note of this. Until our big brain started giving us language to coordinate defensive strategies, until we figured out to throw rocks and use fire as a weapon, until we knew to build structures to keep the hungry things at bay, until we had pointy, jabby, shooty things, we were pretty much the chicken nuggets of the savannah, weren't we? What this means is that every darkness, every next step, every time the sky yawned open above us, eagles were a terror to our evolving selves. We had to be on not just high alert, but the highest alert. We knew the chicken nuggets we were. We knew there were slavering teeth waiting for us every moment of our lives. And that kind of certainty, if it doesn't get hardwired into us, then we're not vigilant enough. We all get eaten. We don't make it through enough generations and millennia to learn how to sharpen sticks into spears. What this means is that monsters, they're built into us at an instinctual level. They're an essential part of what makes us human. But in today's world, where we shine lights into all the corners and disinfect all the surfaces, where we remove all the bitey things from our daily existence, we don't feel the immediate threat or even presence of those slavering teeth anymore, do we? There's other very real and pressing concerns for sure, but we're no longer that concerned about being actually digested by something we never had a chance against. Trick is, though, we need that spike of terror, of certainty, that reminder that we're not the apex anything. It's what keeps us human. If we ever forget the chicken nuggets, we most definitely are, then we're not quite human. Horror, what it can do is give the contemporary world those slavering teeth. Horror can not just remind us that we're human, but it can instill our own chicken nugget nature back into us so that we're watching the sky again, so that we're listening with all we have around the next corner. Because you never know, do you? Why horror? Because it keeps us never knowing. It keeps us uncertain. It keeps us nervous. It keeps us human. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. And that's just a snippet of what you can get in Stephen's essay and all the others. But you and I have talked a lot about why you love horror, why people love horror. And of course, teach horror writing at University of Colorado. And I thought this was one of the good examples. But if you have a second to also talk about, one of the things you also talk about is that line between horror and comedy, which I think people who are watching this who know your books but are not sold on reading because they're terrifying. You will be scared in these books. But can you talk about that line a little? Because I think it helps the library workers understand why so many people love horror.
Yeah, to me, humor and horror, they're two sides of a spinning coin. And also, you'll notice lately, at least on film and television, a lot of the good horror is coming from people with comedy training, comedy backgrounds. And I think that's because horror and comedy work on the same mechanism. That mechanism is tension, tension, release, you know? And so people who understand that mechanism can go either way. They can go to a laugh, they can go to a scream. And I think good horror maximizes that or leans on that anyways. I like to lean on it. It's really easy to go through a manuscript and comb all of your attempts to be funny out of it. But I would warn people that that's just a way to be safe, and being safe is not doing good art. To do something funny, you have to extend yourself and risk the chance of falling on your face. And but there's also rewards to be gained there. So I think it's totally worth it. For me, and in another like different mechanical nature, the way that humor works in horror is it's a pressure release valve. It keeps things from getting too shrieky and plateauing. Humor in horror lets us go up and down, reset, climb, reset, climb, reset, climb, and I think it's essential. And it doesn't have to be slapstick funny. It doesn't have to be punchliney, any of that. It can be dark humor. It can be a little evil grin. But I think all horror will have some element of humor in it.
And all of you just got a free class from Dr. Jones there on writing. So as we finish up, because this is an entire day where all the people watching this are going to be going to different panels and hearing from different authors, I do want to do a shout out. There is one on horror, but there's lots of them, moderated by a lot of great people. But let's give everybody even more books to read. I want to give
Mhm.
you a chance to talk about the books and the authors that are exciting you the most right now, whether they're older or new or coming
Mhm.
out soon.
I think just very, very recently, C.J. Leeds' American Rapture, her novel that follows up her Mayfly. Mayfly was amazing, and American Rapture is equally amazing, just in a wildly different way. It's so cool when you find out that a writer has completely different cards in their deck they can play, and that's it's it. Yeah, I think C.J. Leeds going to be around for a while. She's doing really good stuff. American Rapture is intense and over the top, and it does everything that good horror should do, I think.
And that
And
came out this month from Tor Night
yeah,
Fire. So you should
yeah.
grab that.
It's amazing. And an upcoming novel is Michael W. Hunt's October Film Hunt. I really, really dug that. Michael is such a fine writer, line by line. I don't know, prose mechanics, I guess I might call it, or just his prosody, his ability to arrange things within a sentence. He gets his words in the right order, and that's to me the highest compliment you can give a writer. And aside from being a fine writer, October Film Hunt is terribly disturbing and unsettling, as it should be. It's horror.
I love that. I talk to people all the time, and I
Mhm.
I tell this to my editors at Library Journal and Booklist. I will not allow them to put the word literary in front of the word horror. And I noticed you did
Mhm.
that very well. Both of those books are extremely well written and thought
Mhm.
provoking. And I say it about your books. People sometimes put this tag because you've won
Mhm.
literary awards that aren't just horror to say it's
Mhm.
literary horror. And nothing annoys me more than that.
Yeah.
Um, and I think you've pointed that out today with everything you've shown. You've shown that horror can be thoughtful and
Mhm.
that there's a reason it's written the way it is. We
Mhm.
are about to close up. Do you have any closing thoughts for everyone about yourself or about all the books out there in the world to read?
You know, I mean, we all have TBR piles that we'll never get to, but I think that is the definition of happiness. You can always find another book to read, and the place to do that is at the library. So thank y'all for all being here today and going to all these talks and panels, and thanks for getting the books on the shelves. It means everything. Without books on the shelves, then why would the world even keep going forward?
Thank you, Stephen. And thank you,
Mhm.
everybody. Order all of Stephen's books
Mhm.
and also have a great day. Thank you, all the librarians who are joining us today. Next, we have three concurrent sessions, one of which is spooky treats, literary fiction, and romantic comedies. Remember, you can't go to all three at once, but you can watch them on the recording. And say hi to our friend Grady at the Spooky Treats one. And I just want to thank everyone for being here. When there's breaks, please go to the exhibit hall, visit the sponsors, and check out my next horror column, review column, which will be in January in Library Journal for all of the coverage of Stephen's books and more. Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.